final goal is Islamic world domination. Islamic world domination in our ongoing series of current events. Genesis 12:16, and we've shared this scripture before from the NIV, reads, "This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives." I've shared about applying basic algebra when we have in parentheses, a set of parentheses, a plus b, a plus c, a plus d, a plus e. What's the common factor? A. So there's been strife, for example, in India, Muslim versus Hindu. In the Philippines, Muslim versus Catholic. In Israel, Muslim versus Jew. In the United States, Muslim versus Protestant. In Iraq and Iran, Muslim versus Muslim. Exactly as Genesis chapter 12, verse 6 has prophesied and stated. Globally, it's a fact. Hostilities for these folk are a way of furthering their main goal of Islamic world domination. I'm going to use the first letters, the acronym IWD, not DWM or WMD is weapons of mass destruction. This is IWD, Islamic world domination. So how can we counter this? What's happened to further this? Immigration. Even fellow Islamic or Muslim countries outright refuse people or refugees of their own Muslim faith into their countries. Think back a few years to when Syria had tremendous internal strife and there were tens of thousands of refugees from Syria. Not one Islamic country out of 22 plus of Islamic countries, not one of them offered to take a single Muslim refugee in. But Western Europe opened their arms. Christian-based Western countries took in these Muslim refugees, not the Muslim countries. And the media pushes and emphasizes this thrust that the West needs to accept them. And then, while the Islamic countries refuse to take them, when these people settle in the Western countries, the wealthier Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE send millions of dollars to these people to construct mosques to further their faith in the West. This is part of their strategy to increase their population in the West. And then, talking about population, how they populate like rabbits with their 4 legal wives. They're legally allowed up to 4 wives. And that doesn't talk about other women on the side. And it's the easiest thing to obtain a divorce in Islam. There's something called the triple talaq, Talaq. All the man has to do is, if for whatever reason the Muslim man is unhappy with one of his wives, he looks at her and says, talaq, talaq, talaq. In other words, we are now divorced. Go away. You're on your own. Fend for yourself. A Hindu financial broker, very intelligent middle-aged man, shared some couple of things that stunned me that I hadn't thought of before. He said, what happens, Andrew, is when these women who are now the ex-wives, because then the gentleman's allowed 4 wives, he can take a different woman to become one of his 4 wives. So it's like a roulette, playing a roulette wheel. But what happens to the previous wife or wives who've been issued the triple talaq and been divorced by this man? She is basically abandoned with her children that she had for this man. What happens to them? He said to me, I'll just call him Arun. None of the names I'm using are the original names. So Arun says to me, Andrew, these divorced wives with the children are thrown out after the triple talaq divorce. They cannot afford school tuition for the children, and the boys especially, The girls are confused. The sons are angry as they've been abandoned by their father. And where does their rescue come from? Madrasas. What is a madrasa? M-A-D-R-A-S-S-A-H. Madrasa. Madrasa is a free Islamic school system paid for by the Muslims and through their mosques. But they are radical in their teaching. So these confused girls and angry boys who've been abandoned by their father and the hapless mother, these children are sent to madrasas or Islamic schools. Exactly, listen closely, exactly the type that Barack Hussein Obama attended as a young boy when he was in Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country at present. A madrasa is where Barack Hussein Obama attended as a young boy. That'll help you understand some of his ideology and especially how he implemented that while he was president, even going overseas and bowing before the king of Saudi Arabia. So these madrasas provide the perfect place for a free schooling and education for these angry, hurting children. And listen up, this is what Arun told me. And they provide the perfect place, a breeding ground for developing future suicide bombers and terrorists, because these boys are already so angry and hurt and rejected. The perfect breeding ground for developing future terrorists and suicide bombers, a rich and abundant crop of them. And what about the poor abandoned wife, now divorced? These young mothers, because they wear their hijab, their covering, they're in need of money, of help, of a man in their lives. And so they wait. Again, Arun shared this with me. I never thought about this. And so they wait at certain intersections to be picked up, because nobody can tell who they are with the covering. It's a perfect disguise. It's a very sad plight for these ladies. And dare I submit, and I got this phrase from Dennis Prager, brilliant phrase, these folk are the victims of a benighted faith, Thus, even if not by means of the ballot box, when these people immigrate or given refugee status in the West, it's now only a matter of time before they take over these Christian-based Western countries by means of biological explosion. Once they come in, they allowed multiple wives, or they have so many children. While most countries and cultures, people are having less and less children today, it's quite the opposite in the Muslim world or with the Muslim people. So they are populating like rabbits. So what do you think the future is for the global populace? Can you see the handwriting on the wall? A case in point for you. The entire country of Lebanon, just north of the country of Israel. Lebanon in the Middle East, north of Israel. When I was a child, it was a majority Christian nation, and it was called the Paris of the Middle East. But then what happened? One simple thing. The Muslim population in Lebanon outgrew the Christian population, and bingo, just like that, it turned into a Muslim majority country by biological explosion, which this country has now become antagonistic to the state of Israel. Today, it is home to the terrorist group Hezbollah, fully backed by the well-known state sponsor of terrorism, Iran. I know many beautiful Lebanese people personally, and they are forced to stay low-key because now they know they are in a minority in their own homeland. Sadly, many of them have fled because they don't feel safe there now with a Muslim majority. Midtown, or immigrants who move into the heart of the cities of the Western countries they come to, they live off government welfare schemes that are so generous to these refugees. And these folk, these Muslim immigrants, have oodles of children. Believe me, these Western government grants are very high. Generous amounts of money. One lady, Susie, again not her real name, in Adelaide, well-to-do, has a couple of rental properties. She shared with my wife and I that once one of her homes has been rented through the state government to a large Muslim family, and she's receiving a handsome rent that goes directly into her account from the state government of South Australia, because they're the ones paying the rent for these families, giving them money for food. They don't even have to be motivated to work, but they'll go to the mosque and become radicalized in Australia under your nose while you're paying them to do so, fostering this behavior, nurturing and nourishing it. However, let me tell you, my friend, any Christian-based Western country, once the population of these folk reach a certain percentage, they begin to demand Sharia law. In other words, we don't come under the laws. We will not submit to the laws of your country. We come under Sharia Islamic law. They start to become very aggressive next. If they're denied, they start to take over the ghettos where they live. Did you know that parts of the city of Paris, the capital of France, are a case in point? The French gendarmes or police are afraid to enter certain areas of the city of Paris for fear of their own lives. And they have been threatened that acid would be splashed on their faces from the windows of those apartments. So the French police are afraid to go to certain areas of downtown Paris. Did you know that London has been nicknamed by the Muslim immigrants as Londonistan for many years now? Did you know that London has a Muslim mayor even as of this recording? And he won re-election a couple years ago. All these are testament to not just their unity when they immigrate or migrate to a country, but to their growing population in the UK also, France, UK. Another very little known fact, as I'm spanning the globe, India has just surpassed Pakistan as having the second highest Muslim population of any country in the world, second only to Indonesia. And that too, India is expected to shift upwards to number one in the highest population of Muslims in the world by around 2045, by which time the Muslim Islamic population of India will supersede the entire Muslim population of Indonesia. Treatment of fellow Muslims from developing countries like Pakistan. Listen to this. The average Muslim is strongly encouraged, to make a trip, what they call the Hajj, H-A-J-J, to their holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia at least once in their lifetime, if not more than once, and many of them go more than once. Listen to this. Some of the wealthier Islamic nations, they get preferential treatment when their citizens go to the Hajj. But poorer Muslims, like from the countries of Pakistan and Bangladesh, when they go to the Hajj, they are treated like third-class citizens. Fellow Muslims, spending their hard-earned money to go on this religious holy pilgrimage, but because they don't have the same financial backing, treated like third-class citizens. And you know what quite a few of the wealthier Islamic nations do when you go there on limited work visa, limited tenure for a few years? Upon arrival, yes, you're given the job, but on arrival, they seize and hold your passport. You can't go anywhere. It's like bonded labor, my friend. Unbelievable. These countries also give preferential treatment to fellow Muslims from developing countries. For example, I went one time to the Sultanate of Brunei. The Sultan of Brunei was once known as the wealthiest man in the world. So they have poorer laborers from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, but Muslims are given preferential treatment to come and do the menial work for these people of Brunei in that little sheikhdom. That's how they operate, even how they treat their fellow Muslims. They give them preference, but they're given the lowest jobs. Look at how they try to attract people who go to their Islamic countries into their Islamic faith. I've talked one-on-one with people who worked in the Gulf countries, and those folk bring more than a subtle or gentle pressure on these employees to convert to Islam. And guess one of the incentives they give them? If you convert to Islam, we'll give you a brand new Mercedes-Benz car. And so you know what quite a few of these people from developing countries do? They know their work tenure is 4 years, let's say. So at year 3.5 or thereabouts, they will do a fake conversion to Islam, get the brand new Mercedes-Benz, of course, after getting circumcised. Get the brand new Mercedes-Benz, and then in a couple of months, their 10 years over, they come back to their home country, bring the brand new Mercedes-Benz back with them, and then they go back to their original faith, whatever it was. Obviously, they couldn't have a personal relationship with Christ or know what it is to be born again, to go through such a charade, but it's a charade nevertheless. Some people talk about, well, you know, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, the few wealthy Arab sheikdoms such as Dubai, Sharjah, Qatar, Bahrain, Doha, etc. They talk about them and say, oh, how wonderful those Emirates are. How wonderful life is there, my friend. It is true. These few Arab sheikdoms are afloat by means of the petrodollar because they are oil rich. But when I visited Dubai some years ago to visit a friend, I would joke and tease, as is my wont. In his house, just his family, him, his wife, and their one child, my wife and I would joke and tease, regardless of subject or topic, and my host, my friend, who respects me highly, in a quiet voice, shared with me to please not crack any jokes about or against that faith or against that country or people, as A, it could get him in trouble because their maid was Muslim and she could report it to the authorities, or B, if it was reported, I could get deported, which I kind of brushed aside because I was only there for 3 days, so if they had to deport me, it would be a day or so earlier. Nevertheless, I needed to be thoughtful of my host. The problem is, these are wealthy Arab sheikdoms, touted in the West and the rest of the world. But still, those who live there live in fear. They whisper in their own homes, my friend. Even in these so-called wealthiest and freest of Arab sheikdoms, dissent is absolutely not tolerated. Period. Even as of this recording, Sweden, the country, who opened their arms to Muslim refugees from Syria some years ago, has seen their one-time peace-loving country experience an astronomical spike in crime rates. So their government is looking to pass a law to deport these people. And can you blame the Swedes? They must wake up, and better late than never. Much of Western Europe is teetering on the brink too, if they do not wake up soon and smell the roses. The most recent news, this is all current events, I heard about Nordic 5, or around 5 countries from that area of northwestern Europe who are looking at coming to a consensus on the deportation of these Muslims that they brought in at the time that Syria underwent huge internal strife. Deportation, in my humble opinion, is the most humane Christian way of handling folk such as these. Consider that in former times, rulers, way back in medieval times, rulers used to banish enemies of the state or send them into exile. It was a far more humane and much less vindictive way of dealing with enemies than to have them beheaded. Today, however, there are quite a few options, almost 22 plus Muslim countries to choose from, if not the country of their origin or the country of the original ancestral migrant. And if you think deportation is totally unacceptable or impossible, politically incorrect in today's world, listen up. Are you listening? Even as I speak, November of 2023 for this upload, Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, has issued a decree that all illegals in their country from neighboring Afghanistan had to go back voluntarily to their country by November 1st, as the first of this month, 2023, or they would face forcible deportation. This is one Islamic country to another Islamic country. Because conditions were so hard in Afghanistan, many of them came over to Pakistan for a little better life, from one Muslim country to the other, till finally Pakistan says, we don't want you anymore, go back to your country or we will forcibly deport you. In fact, Pakistan, who have their own group of terrorists, percentage of terrorists, has been accusing Kabul in Afghanistan of Taliban-sponsored terrorism on Pakistani soil. His hand shall be against his brother, Muslim against Muslim. I talked about Iraq versus Iran. This is Pakistan versus Afghanistan and vice versa. Keep in mind, again, this is from one Muslim country to another. No clemency, no offering of refugee status, and not so much as a whimper from the Luciferian mainstream media about this action being abhorrent. The mainstream media is simply mute and they refuse to report on it. Perhaps they're afraid they would be called out as being Islamophobic if they challenge this behavior by a Muslim country. And for the record, even these Muslim Afghanistani refugees in Pakistan, are you ready for this? Are being taken care of and funded by the American taxpayer. Christian-based United States government has given the Pakistani government around $275 million to help care for these refugees. This is like a Ripley's Believe It or Not. There is so much to cover on this topic of Islamic world domination that I'm stopping here, calling this part 1, and next upload will be part 2. If you're being challenged and blessed and haven't yet, would you subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, like, share, and comment below. Thank you and God bless you.